They built 135 luxury homes on my family's land without permission, then tried to evict me from my own property. You've got to see this to believe it. One lone farmhouse completely swallowed by 135 identical McMansions like my grandfather's legacy got mugged by a suburban nightmare. I'm Ezra Blackwood, and the woman stomping across my yard with a sheriff's deputy actually thinks she can steal 4 generations of my family's sweat and call it progress. Veronica Ashcraft slides out of her pristine white Tesla, designer heels immediately sinking into farm mud with that perfect squelching sound of karma. The acrid stench of wet concrete from her illegal development battles the sweet honeysuckle my late wife planted. She waves an eviction notice at me like I'm some squatter on my own damn land. This is a family neighborhood now, she announces with corporate smugness, not some rural eyesore. Thunder crashes overhead as my weathered hand grips the brass dam lever, worn smooth by my grandfather's faithful touch. What would you do if someone stole your family's legacy and called you the problem? Where are you watching from? Let me back up and explain how a peaceful cattle ranch became ground zero for the most brazen land theft in county history. I'm Ezra Blackwood, 4th-generation rancher on 847 acres my great-grandfather Tobias homesteaded in 1889. This isn't just property. It's American legacy written in weathered fence posts, hand-dug wells, and the massive oak tree planted by a man who believed hard work and honest dealing would build something lasting. For generations of Blackwoods have proven him right, until now. The ranch sits on a natural watershed fed by underground springs that bubble up crystal clear year-round. You can taste the minerals in that water, clean and sweet like nature intended. So pure my late wife Sarah used to joke it could cure anything except a broken heart. My grandfather built a small earthen dam in 1962, capturing spring runoff in a reservoir that feeds the creek winding through our entire valley. Sarah understood this land better than anyone. She wasn't just my wife for 26 years, she was an environmental scientist with a PhD who wrote her master's thesis on our exact watershed. She used to say, "Water remembers, Ezra. It always flows back to where it belongs." That phrase kept echoing in my head the day bulldozers rolled in. It started quiet. One morning I woke to the rumble of heavy machinery. The horizon shimmered with the rising sun, and dust. By the time I reached the ridge, I saw men in neon vests hammering stakes across my pasture. No letter, no warning, just flags marking the death of everything I'd built. I called the county office, but nobody returned my calls. The clerk mumbled something about a title transfer under eminent domain. Only later did I find the signature, forged. By the time I hired a lawyer, the homes were half-built. Streets paved over cattle trails, cul-de-sacs carved through the orchard where Sarah and I used to picnic. They named the place Silverbrook Estates. A cruel joke, since the only brook that ever ran here belonged to me. That evening, I walked down to the dam. Wind rippled across the reservoir, golden in the setting sun. My reflection looked older, smaller, surrounded by ghosts of my own making. That's when I made the promise. If they wouldn't listen to law, they'd listen to the land. Nature always remembers. They said I was crazy. That one man couldn't fight a homeowners association backed by 3 developers, a law firm, and the county itself. Maybe they were right. But they forgot, I wasn't just any man. I was a Blackwood, and this land had fought harder storms than them. The first sign something was wrong came when I found the mailbox stuffed with letters, not to me, but about me. Violation notices. Noise complaints. Fence height disputes. They listed my old farmhouse as Lot 136, part of Silverbrook Estates. They'd literally written me out of my own deed. Every evening I'd sit on the porch, the sound of construction still echoing into the night. New families moved in one by one, smiling as they watered imported sod on land that once grew wild clover. The HOA newsletter called me a holdout squatter and urged residents to report any disturbances near my property line. Disturbances. That was rich. The only noise came from their lawnmowers and their perfectly synchronized sprinklers wasting the same water their foundations sat on. I decided to dig. Literally. In Sarah's old filing cabinet, I found her maps, topographical drawings, hydrology studies, geological layers of our watershed. Each marked with her careful notes. Aquifer pressure sensitive. Subsurface channel, unstable with overbuilding. She'd warned the county decades ago that uncontrolled construction could collapse the water table. I remembered the town hall meeting, her standing in front of a half-empty room, warning them that greed would make the valley sink. They'd nodded politely and ignored her. Now, the ghosts of her words felt alive again. I took the maps and went to the county records office. The clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 22, looked up at me like I was a nuisance. "Sir, that land is under the jurisdiction of Silverbrook HOA now," he said flatly. "Check again," I told him. "Search by the original deed holder, Tobias Blackwood, 1889. He typed. Waited. Then frowned. "That's weird," he muttered. "There's a sealed file attached to it. Restricted access. Restricted. To my own family records." I leaned closer. "Who sealed it?" He hesitated. "Looks like Veronica Ashcraft. Filed under County Development Code revision." I felt a coldness settle in my chest, the kind that comes before a storm breaks. When I got home, 2 black SUVs sat parked outside my gate. 3 men in suits stood by the fence, pretending not to look my way. The HOA had sent surveyors, they said. But they weren't measuring, they were taking pictures. Of my house. My dam. My generator shed. The message was clear: stop digging. That night, thunder rolled across the valley again. The reservoir shimmered under flashes of lightning like something alive, restless. I sat by the dam house, staring at the lever. My grandfather's initials were carved into the handle, TB. Tobias Blackwood, the man who built it with his bare hands, believing in progress that didn't come at the cost of integrity. Inside, I lit a lamp and pulled out Sarah's old notebooks. There, between pages of water quality reports and love notes she used to doodle in the margins, I found something I'd forgotten: a legal clause. Any commercial development within 300 yards of the watershed boundary voids transfer rights under State Water Protection Act. That meant every home they'd built near the reservoir was illegal. Every foundation, every pipe, every HOA sign, all of it. But I needed proof. The next morning, I walked into the half-finished HOA office, boots caked with mud, holding Sarah's files like holy scripture. Veronica looked up from her glass desk with that rehearsed smile. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "this harassment has to stop." "No," I said quietly. "This flooding's just getting started." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me." I laid the papers down. "You built your dream homes on protected land. And when the water rises, and it will, the only thing left standing will be the truth." As I turned to leave, her perfume mixed with the faint odor of wet concrete. It smelled like fear. And somewhere behind me, the first hairline cracks began to appear in the reservoir wall. By the end of that week, Silverbrook Estate stopped looking like a dream and started feeling like a warning. The air changed first. The wind carried a sour, metallic smell, and the grass near the new cul-de-sacs turned yellow overnight. Residents complained about musty water and mildew odors, blaming the builder. They didn't know they'd poisoned the earth that fed them. I didn't need Sarah's degrees to understand what was happening. They'd built their shining palaces right on top of the valley's breathing lungs, the natural springs. When they poured concrete, they sealed the ground tight, choking off the flow. Water that once ran freely beneath their feet had nowhere to go now, except back. Every night, I'd hear it. A deep, muffled groan beneath the soil. Like the land itself was restless. Like it remembered. Veronica kept doubling down. She sent HOA letters threatening fines for my unsightly barn and non-compliance with neighborhood standards. Can you imagine that? My barn, standing there since 1910, breaking their aesthetic rules. One morning I found a sign staked right on my fence. Future site of Silverbrook Community Park. They hadn't even asked. They were claiming what little I had left. That's when I stopped playing by their rules. I called in an old friend, Luke Harris, a retired county engineer. He'd worked with Sarah once, and owed her more than a favor. Luke showed up in a rusted pickup, gray beard, wearing the same denim jacket he'd had since the 80s. He walked the dam, tapped the concrete with his knuckles, and whistled low. She was right, he said. They built too close. Those foundations are sucking pressure off the water table. You've got stress fractures building up under the whole subdivision. Can it be fixed? I asked. He looked at me for a long time before answering. Fixed. Maybe. But it'd mean tearing half the place down. And they'll never do that. He paused, glancing toward the glowing rows of identical homes beyond the trees. Ezra, if the rains come early this year, you might not have to lift a finger. That night, the rain did come. It started gentle, a soft patter on the tin roof, the kind Sarah used to fall asleep to. Then it grew angry. Sheets of water hammered the valley for hours, lightning splitting the sky like judgment. I sat by the window, watching the creek swell, turning brown with runoff from freshly paved driveways. By midnight, the reservoir was full. By 2 a.m., it was angry. I took the lantern and walked out to the dam. The air crackled with static, and the roar of water drowned out my thoughts. I could feel the vibration under my boots, deep, rhythmic, like a pulse. The brass lever glistened in the stormlight. I ran my fingers over the initials again, TB. Water remembers, Sarah's voice whispered somewhere in the thunder. I didn't pull the lever that night. Not yet. But I didn't have to. The storm was doing the work for me. The next morning, chaos bloomed across Silverbrook. Streets flooded, basements filled, lawns turned to swamps. HOA members marched door to door, shouting orders, blaming faulty drainage, faulty pipes, anything but the truth. Veronica came to my gate in her soaked white coat, makeup streaked, voice trembling with anger. You did this, she screamed. You're sabotaging the development. I just pointed toward the ridge, where the dam loomed above everything. No, I said softly. You did this when you forgot who this land belonged to. She called me insane, threatened lawsuits, arrests, the whole corporate symphony. But I saw something new in her eyes that day. Not rage. Not arrogance. Fear. And when she turned to leave, I noticed the faintest tremor rippling through the earth beneath her heels, the sound of something ancient, shifting awake. Nature had started her countdown. By the next sunrise, Silverbrook Estates looked less like a neighborhood and more like a battlefield. The glossy brochures had promised luxury lakeside living. Now the lake was living in their basements. The HOA called an emergency meeting in their half-finished clubhouse. Floodwater lapped at the parking lot while developers in expensive raincoats argued with engineers who couldn't meet each other's eyes. From the ridge, I watched them through my binoculars, the same spot where my grandfather used to count cattle at dusk. Now I was counting houses sinking inch by inch into the mud. Luke showed up again, mud-splattered and pale. She's not going to hold much longer, he warned, staring at the dam. You've got pressure fractures running through the base wall. If the rain doesn't stop, you'll have a full breach within a day. I turned to him. And if I pull the lever? He hesitated. It'll flood the valley. Everything below will wash out, the houses, the roads, everything. But it'll also reset the watershed. Nature will take it back. Would Sarah have done it? I asked quietly. He sighed. She'd have said nature doesn't need help destroying, only time. But time was the one thing Silverbrook didn't have. By afternoon, county trucks rolled in, helicopters thumped overhead, and news vans lined the highway. The story was out: unstable development threatens suburban subdivision. Veronica appeared on TV, her voice steady but her eyes wide. She blamed the old farmer's illegal dam, painting me as the villain threatening innocent families. That night, someone cut my power. I sat alone by candlelight, the rain relentless outside, reading Sarah's old journal. Between notes on aquifers and rainfall patterns, I found a line she'd written years ago after a miscarriage we never talked about. Sometimes loss is the only language the earth understands. I didn't sleep after that. Near dawn, I walked to the dam. The wind carried the scent of pine and ozone. Mist rolled over the reservoir like smoke from a sleeping beast. Below, the valley lights flickered, Silverbrook drowning in its own reflection. The brass lever waited. Cold. Heavy. Eternal. I thought about my grandfather, Tobias, hammering this dam together with his bare hands, believing it would protect generations. I thought about my wife, Sarah, whispering to me about balance and respect for the land. And I thought about Veronica, her sharp voice slicing through my memories like a knife, calling my life an eyesore. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the valley, roofs like coffin lids beneath the water. The lever called to me. Luke's words echoed in my mind: if you pull it, you can't stop it. And Sarah's voice, softer: water remembers. My hands shook as I wrapped them around the brass handle. It felt alive, humming with the storm's fury, the pulse of a century of restraint. My reflection stared back at me in the wet metal, tired eyes, soaked clothes, and behind me, the ghosts of everyone who'd ever called this place home. Then, footsteps. Veronica. She stood in the rain, hair plastered to her face, mascara streaked like war paint. Her voice was raw now, no smugness, no power. Just desperation. Ezra, please. There are children down there. Her words cut through the storm like a single bell. For the first time, she wasn't talking at me, she was begging to me. I stared past her, down into the valley, where headlights bobbed through floodwater like lost fireflies. I thought about Sarah's hands planting honeysuckle by the porch, about the laughter that used to echo off the barn walls, about the promise I made to protect this land, not weaponize it. The dam groaned again, a low, mournful sound that seemed to ask, what kind of legacy will you leave? Slowly, I let go of the lever. I won't be like you, I said quietly. But nature will finish what you started. As I turned away, a new crack echoed through the valley, deep, thunderous, final. The earth had made her choice. The sound came first, a low rumble that shook the bones of the valley. Then the roar. Like 1,000 storms colliding at once. I turned just in time to see the reservoir wall split wide open. The dam didn't explode, it exhaled. A century of pressure released in one great heaving sigh, as if the land itself had decided it was done holding its breath for people who'd stopped listening. The surge hit like judgment. Water cascaded down the valley, devouring fences, gardens, driveways, everything that didn't belong. Silverbrook's perfect symmetry was gone in seconds, replaced by the chaos it had tried to bury. From the ridge, I saw roofs tilt and foundations crumble. The HOA clubhouse, that glass and steel monument to greed, folded like paper under the flood. Yet somehow, miraculously, the farmhouse still stood, perched just above the flood line. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just stood there, drenched, watching my family's land take back what was stolen. Luke arrived hours later, boots soaked to his knees, eyes wide with awe. Jesus, Ezra, he muttered. It's all gone. I nodded. No. It's back. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Only the rain filled the silence, softer now, like the valley was finally breathing again. By dawn, helicopters hovered over what used to be Silverbrook Estates. Reporters called it a catastrophic infrastructure failure. Veronica called it an act of God. For once, she wasn't wrong. When the sheriff came up the hill, I was already waiting on the porch with coffee. He didn't bother with small talk. "You knew this could happen," he said. I looked out at the water glistening in the morning light. "She knew," I replied, handing him Sarah's files. "All of it. Every test, every warning. The county ignored her. They built anyway." He thumbed through the papers, jaw tightening. "We'll need your statement." "You'll have it," I said. "But it's not my story anymore. It's hers." In the weeks that followed, the lawsuits piled higher than the debris. Developers blamed engineers blamed the HOA blamed the weather. But the truth, the real truth, came from Sarah's research, printed across national headlines. Protected watershed ignored, illegal housing collapse linked to county fraud. Veronica Ashcraft vanished from public view after that. Some said she moved out of state. Others whispered she bought a condo downtown, high above anything that could ever flood again. As for me, I stayed. The farmhouse still stands. The fields are greener than they've been in years. Wildflowers grow where driveways used to be, and the reservoir has reshaped itself into a new lake, wider, calmer, unbothered by fences or rules. Sometimes at night, I sit by the dam's remains, the brass lever half buried in mud. When the moon hits it just right, it glints like an old medal, tarnished, but proud. People ask if I regret it. If I wish I'd stopped it before the flood. But regret is a city word. Out here, we live with consequence. This land doesn't forget. And neither do I. A few weeks ago, a letter came in the mail, from a young girl who used to live in Silverbrook. She wrote, "Mr. Blackwood, my mom says you saved the valley. The lake by your house is the prettiest thing I've ever seen. She says water always finds its way home." I read it 3 times before I smiled. Because she was right. The county calls it Lake Silverbrook now. But locals have a different name. Blackwood's Return. Sometimes, when the wind's just right, I can almost hear Sarah's voice riding the breeze over the water. "You see, Ezra. Nature doesn't take revenge. It simply corrects." And I whisper back into the dark. Then I guess it finally remembered.